Great. Thank you guys all for joining us for our second semi-formal of the year, our webinars series, where we get together and try and at least do more than just witty banter, although we like that too. But we are still collecting topic ideas for anyone out there who has anything they would like to learn about. And we have a large and evolving brain trust in the Northeast, where we can start relying on some of those folks to maybe bring some of their smartness into the discussion. But I just wanted to start with a little background on update on our races. So good news from the state of Maine is it looks like they'll be lifting in-person gatherings for outdoors by 50% by April and 100% by May. So that will be really good for getting the caps on all our races upped. Hopefully, if everything continues to go in the right direction here, by race date in July. So right now we have 100-person limits for every race, and those are starting to get tight. So if you want to sign up and you haven't signed up yet, now is a good time to do it. We're getting 2 or 3 emails a day inquiring about it, and a lot of questions on pack rafts. So we may have to reach out to some resident pack raft experts to give people some beta on how those work in adventure races. But the biggest question we've gotten is, if I don't have a pack raft, will I still want to do this race? And the answer is yes. The pack raft section is, what I'm telling people, it's only 2 or 3 additional checkpoints. It's more of a tactical advantage. But it's a longer course. If you don't have a pack raft, you're still going to race for 24 hours. Our races are designed to get everyone on the course to race to the cutoff. So no one's finishing in 16 hours unless you're skipping a lot of the course. Everyone will be racing for right up to that deadline, wondering, should we go for that last checkpoint, or should we call it a day and head to the finish to beat the deadline? Hey, Kate, you're being a little loud. Yeah, as she's cooking me dinner, I'm telling her she's being too loud. Yes, today. And then the other thing I wanted to add was for Wildlands, that plan is coming together for a really cool race. We are going to be doing a stage race, which is a little old school, 2 8-hour races, one on Saturday, one on Sunday for September 25th and 26th. So if you just want to race on 1 8-hour race, that'll be for beginner and intermediate racers, that'll be on Saturday. And for folks who want to race for both days, there's going to be a more technical pack raft mandatory race on Saturday, and then a non-pack raft race on Sunday. That will be what it looks like. We haven't opened registration for that yet, but we'll start thinking about it soon. I think we're still waiting to see with permitting and getting every course finalized before we open up registration. So that's the update from Strong Machine. The team is back from Florida, and just wanted to congratulate them on a really hard-fought race. You guys struggled and pushed through a lot of adversity out there, and our thoughts also to Troy Mance, who was killed in an accident during that race. So I wanted to just give our condolences there, and not to take away anything from the incredible racing that took place as well, and the heart that our team put into that race. So congratulations to our guys and to everyone who competed. And I know we saw some other Maine Summer Adventure Race veterans out there racing as well. So congratulations to them on their race. And today we have a kind of a seminar to be led by Evan with chirpy commentary from Kate and myself, playing the Glenn Lewis role here. to discuss how to pack, the how of packing for an event race 24 hours or less. So essentially a non-expedition race. An expedition race packing is a whole other kit and caboodle, and we'll probably do a separate webinar on that at some point in the future. But given that most of us are not going to be doing expedition races this year, we figured this will have a little bit higher yield for generating useful information for you guys. So basically, I would say the biggest stress for me and the biggest pain in the butt for me is getting ready for an adventure race. The racing is actually the easy part. Because adventure racing takes so much gear, you're dealing with teammates, logistics, it can be a real pain in the butt, which is why I rely so much on my teammates to do it, because I'm not very good at it. But I've gotten better over the years, and one guy I know who is really good at this and thinks with both sides of his brain on this issue is Evan Moreshead, who is been racing with Strong Machine for 3 or 4 years now, pretty much since the beginning of the official team. So we're really excited to hear his words of wisdom, and we can help you out along the way. You have anything else?
Just that people should add any thoughts or questions in the chat window. Yeah. It's a good way to chime in.
Yeah, chat it out. And I will mute myself so that Kate can
finish sauteing. Yes.
Sorry about that. And then yeah, if you need me at all, just chat me or scream my name, Evan, and I'll try and help you out. Yeah, passing it over.
All right. So pardon any additional noise from the background as our cats are losing their minds in the corner. Cliff/Kate, can someone give me access to share screen as you walk away? If you can't figure out that, that's also okay.
Kate, you're on mute, by the way, if you're...
All right. Host disabled participant screen sharing. I am now the host. I am the captain now. Of course, I updated. No, I updated my computer, so now I have to. All right, so we're not going to share screen because it won't let me, because I updated my computer for work and they were like, guess what? No.
Send me your presentation and I can share my screen.
All right. Share. Copy link.
I know you worked hard on that.
I worked so hard. It took all of 15 minutes. The quote was the hardest part. I'm just gonna share it in the chat. Anyone can follow along if they want. Do I have to give you back host? Let's see.
Yeah.
More. Make host. Change host.
I think no, I got it. Can you see it?
Started screen sharing. There we go. Yeah.
Great. Just tell me to flip slides.
So, packing for a 24-hour race based on my experience. I am not an expert. What works for me may not work for you. My slides here are a very high-level overview of basic things, and then I will add witty commentary along the way. Flip the slide. So the most important part of packing is preparation. This may go without saying, but look at the gear list and all the mandatory gear, because it is different for every race. You will forget stuff, and you don't want to be that guy at the race that doesn't have something like PFDs at a race. So you have to figure out what you need to carry. Is there going to be a gear drop? That's one thing that I always look at. So Is there a bike drop, or is there a paddle bag that I can leave additional things in? And then is there a swim or a history of a swim in this event? Because that changes what I pack and maybe how I pack, because wet gear is no fun. Also talk to your team about who's bringing what. Like when we race with Strong Machine, I always can rely on Cliff and Kate to bring all of the necessary mandatory gear because they have it all and I'm too cheap to buy it. And then build your own list. What do you need to be successful on the race course? So that's outside of mandatory gear. It's, you know, what do you need to wear to make yourself comfortable out there or bring with you? And then last, check the weather. Be prepared for cold and wet if it might be cold and wet, because what you might bring for one race in the dry and what you bring for a race in the wet and cold is very different. And you got to look at the weather for the whole day, because temperatures get really cold at 3 a.m. And I've been out there shivering because I was like, it'll be in July, it'll be fast, and we'll go, you know, light on this one, and then been miserable because I didn't bring the right gear. Flip it. So here's my wonderful quote that I spent a long time coming up with. The only thing adventure racers love more than being outdoors is a good spreadsheet. Quote, Nathan Fave by Evan Moreshead. So that's a quote you can take and go forward. Yeah, remember the double quotes there. So you can flip it. So this is my actual packing list from the last MSAR that we went to. So I always put together a nice spreadsheet of what's mandatory for the team, what's a bonus for the team, what's personal required gear, non-required team things. And then I can go through and highlight things and contact different people to figure out who's bringing what, who is not racing, but I need to call to get something, and then where I'm going to put things, as well as a to-do list. So for this one, I had like charge my lights, sort my food, find all of my body lubes, as well as pack my post-race clothing. So this race was a little bit different since I wasn't racing with an official Strong Machine team. So I needed to like actually think of all the team gear. So this is like a really good example, and I can actually share this out after the chat.
I will share it in the Facebook group since Evan is not on Facebook.
Yeah, when I say I will, I mean Emily will. She's the responsible one here. Yes, Emily for the win. So I think the most important thing here is the non-required personal gear, and this is where it will be different for everyone. So I know for me that when I race, I want to wear my team clothes, I want my specific sunglasses, my bike gloves, my race watch, and then I know that when I'm out there, I always want bug spray, chapstick, extra contact lenses, extra lube, and salt and caffeine, and then cash, because if you do enough races, you will need cash at some point to buy something on the race course, like a camera, Glenn. Yeah.
I want to just tell that story really quick. During C2C, there was a mandatory take a photo at a CP, and Glenn, you're there. You tell the story.
Yeah, so it's worse than it sounds. We had to take photos to get, you had to take 3 pictures to get credit for a CP. And the idea was you had to take it with your mandatory gear, which is your phone. But we realized about 10 miles into the leg that we didn't have the phone. So we thought on our feet and skirted around the rules by we tried to purchase a track phone. We ended up having to purchase a disposable camera, but got the job done. But it was probably like a 30-minute detour just because we didn't have the mandatory gear.
So the use of mandatory gear is always in question. And we've had races where there's been mandatory gear that we've, more often than not, don't even use it. It just sits at the bottom of your pack. But it's a good lesson to always bring the mandatory gear, even if you think it's stupid. If it's on the mandatory list, you need to have it. And some races, more than others actually, more often than not, you will have a gear check where even if it's the silliest piece of gear, if it's on that mandatory list and it's not in your team's gear, if you're not carrying it, you could be assessed a penalty. So don't question the gear list too much. And if you do it before the race and email the race director instead of on the course, because you're not going to win that argument. So I'll just add that in.
Yeah. Mandatory gear, make sure you have it and make sure it works. We did a race a couple of years ago where it required everyone on the team to have their own matches or lighter, and you had to light a candle. So you needed matches or lighter that you could actually use and light a candle, which was very difficult in winter. Yeah. Yeah, you can flip this one. So organize. Everything needs a home, have a system and a plan. And my last note is dry gear is happy gear. So the way I always organize my gear is I put everything into individual dry bags, or I group things into individual small dry bags. They're about 1 liter. They're super lightweight. And I have my crazy system where everything is color coordinated. And so I know that a green bag will have clothing in it, and my orange bag has my headlight and other mandatory gear. So make sure that you have a system that works for you, and you know where all your things are, because at hour 18, when you're tired and you don't want to do it anymore and you need to find something, being able to find it without taking apart your whole bag is great. And keeping all of your things dry is really important.
One thing I've used with
bag or Ziploc bags or what?
Sorry, one thing I've used with success is different colored dry bags. If you're carrying a lot of dry bags or very well labeled stuff, but different colored dry bags really is kind of, you don't need much of a brain to know what's in what. And then as you race multiple races, you start to associate the color with what stuff's in it. And so that becomes a good system. Ziplocs are a cheaper way of doing it than dry bags. Dry bags are also heavier. So in shorter races, it matters a little less, but you develop these systems over time, but it's good to have it in the back of your head as you're packing of what systems you're going to be working with. And not only that, but how it works with your teammates as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And an anecdote here on dry gear is Cliff and I did a race a couple summers ago where the very first leg was a half-mile swim. And all of our stuff got immediately soaked, and the stuff that I didn't have organized and put away just got destroyed between food, extra salt tabs. And after hour 1, it was a bit of a cluster as as we flailed our way through that course. Yeah, so you can flip it. So then I always pack. I pack. I am a weird person, and I will pack for a race 3 to 7 days before the race, so that I know where everything is. I can then go through my list and pack or repack things, adjust things if I think, oh, maybe I actually want this, or I don't actually want this. Also prep and pack your food so that you can eat and move at the same time, and that you have a place for all of your extra food. And then review and walk around with your pack on. It's very easy to grab too big of a pack and fill it up, and then have a lot of weight for a 24-hour race or an 8-hour race when you have everything in it, because the good rule of thumb is the bigger the pack, the more things you will bring, whether you need them or not. Yeah, and that's pretty much my packing system. I can talk more about gear or whatever people have interest in on what I pack. But yeah, Cliff, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, always. So one other thing that came to my head is, as you're packing your pack, the walking around with it is actually a really important little tip, because I have raced where I've just thrown stuff in my pack the morning of the race, and you know, another point is you never have enough time the morning of the race. So anything you can do before then is always better than anything you do that morning. I've thrown stuff in my pack at the last moment and everything's weighted on one side, and I've got a kink in my shoulder, my neck, my back, after 6 hours of racing. So getting things balanced in your pack is really important for having a good race. It's one of those things you're not thinking about as you're moving from checkpoint to checkpoint, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, why is my back killing me? It's because all your heavy stuff's on one side of your pack and all your light stuff's on the other. The other thing is always having you making really good use of your pockets and creating a system where you're able to access everything you need as on the go as much as possible. Different pockets for different food that you're keeping in the same place, a layer that hopefully you can grab as you're walking or running and throw on without having to take your pack off, put it down on the ground, and open up your pack. Those things are all really, speed is so of the essence in these shorter races. You really don't have a moment to spare. And quite honestly, I think, if something's in your pack, there are chances that you won't have time to even open your pack the entire race. So you may not see that until the finish. So really being able to access things as quickly as possible, even on a gear check, being able to get out whatever they're checking as quickly as possible instead of shuffling around for a few minutes could be the difference between winning and losing an 8-hour race. So every second really does matter on those shorter races. And so you will perfect these systems as you race more, but at the beginning, it's really good to go in with that intentional mindset of trying to think things out in advance so that when you're racing, everything's going as smoothly as possible. Does anyone else have anything?
We have a couple of good questions coming in.
Oh, yeah.
Good questions. But one more anecdote on that good utilization of pockets. At Untamed in 2018, I was using the Out There pack, which has, if you've ever seen it, has 1,001 pockets. And on day 3, I found about 2 pounds of gummy bears that I'd stuck in a pocket that weren't where I thought they were. So for 3 days, I was hauling around an extra 2 pounds of sugar, which was a boon when I found it. And I was so excited, but it was also like, oh, that's a lot of weight to haul around. So we had some questions coming about what pack size you use for a 24 to 36 hour race. I use a 25 liter pack. 25 to 15 liter is usually all I need for anything that is not like expedition length. I might change that up for a bigger pack for something with a pack raft if I might have to carry my pack raft or paddle or PFD. But that is to be determined. But for the most part, I'll just use the same 24 liter pack that I use for everything. I have the Fast Pack 24 by Ultimate Direction, and it's completely destroyed, but it doesn't have any holes in it, so I use it. How much weight or how much water? I usually have 3 liters of water. I use a 3-liter Camelback, and that's what I'll use for pretty much every race. And whether I fill it up or not all the way is questionable, but usually I try to fill it up. Packraft paddles. I am not the person to answer that. That sounds like a Cliff, or I think I see Dan on this, so maybe he can respond in the chat.
Yeah,
as well.
Dan or Dave. We have a question. We should repeat the question just so it's obvious to people listening. But the question is, what do you recommend for packraft paddles? I think it really depends on the race. I've seen people use webbed hand gloves in longer races, so they don't have to carry a paddle. We would just carry our typical paddle, which breaks down into four pieces. There haven't been that many 24-hour races we've done that use pack rafts, so we're excited to get into that. That's becoming a bigger part of the sport. If anyone else has any other ideas.
I want to just say too, I think when you're pack rafting, obviously you're carrying, typically, you're carrying your raft and your paddles. So it's the kind of time that if you're looking for a gear upgrade, it might be, your sort of time to upgrade your paddles, because a carbon paddle is just so much lighter than basically most of the other materials out there. Also, in terms of packing your pack raft and your paddles, you're going to need a bigger pack for that, obviously. And that's where Ultimate Direction is a great recommendation for anybody who's looking for a small pack. Like, I actually intend, so we'll be racing the Shenandoah Epic in a few weeks, and I intend to race with my tiny, little, even, I think it's probably like a 16-liter Ultimate Direction pack if I can get away with it.
Like a trail running vest almost.
Yeah, I'm going to try to go as light as possible, but if you have a pack rafting race, obviously you're going to want to have a bigger backpack, and we usually use Hyperlite for those, just because we really like their packs for their waterproofness and the roll top. So if you have paddles or something, then you can stick your paddles out the top of the roll top pack. Yeah, I plan to load my extra gear on Evan for the Epic. But yeah, for typically. If we have a lot more to carry, then we usually go with our Hyperlite packs.
We have a pro deal in Hyperlite. If you guys want it, just send me an email and I can get you a discount. And I believe we have an out there discount too if anyone's looking to upgrade their pack. So, yeah, in terms of what Kate was saying, that's a super important element of this, which I think we've touched on. But communication before the race with all your teammates on who's carrying what is very important, because you don't want to get to a mandatory gear point and people are like, I have that. Oh, I have one too. And you're carrying, 3 mandatory flares when you only need one. It's extra weight and not necessary. So you really want to have that. We usually
have a Google Doc that we're all working off of in advance. I know Evan showed his example, and that's one where we will all share what we're planning to bring. And then make sure that we have the gear list all covered and that we aren't carrying multiples of the same thing.
Are there any other questions out there?
Well, I know Brian asked a question about pack rafts during MSAR, and I think he asked if they will be staged or if you have to carry them. I think at this point that we should defer. We will give information on that closer to the race. I don't think we should.
Oh, they're asking for specific MSAR information? Yeah. Maybe next webinar. Keep tuning in.
There will be more information about the pack rafting in MSAR, but we are not prepared to share that quite yet.
Is there anyone else who wants to share their thoughts out there on their experiences packing? Yeah, Dave.
Just one of the things that I have encountered in a few races that people may want to consider. I think it's important to size appropriately for the races where you can get away with less gear and you don't want your pack to be flapping all over the place when you're running with a bladder that's loose or whatever. But there's something to be said as well for a pack that like Hyperlite, where you can more or less pour things into it where you have to and make quicker transitions, roll the top down and still have a pretty condensed pack. I tend to race with a fairly large pack almost all the time. I've had too many occasions where either teammates or a few races where my pack was a little tight and I was carrying a pack raft or paddles or whatever. And the repacking issue literally took up too much time. So the earlier comments about, put the pack on your back and walk around a little bit with it and see how it feels on your back. Some people don't like a big pack on their back, but if you have a pack that, like the out there packs are pretty heavy packs before you put anything into them. So you can save yourself 1.5 pounds if you go with a lighter pack that maybe is got one large tube for your volume and a couple side pouches. But then if you dress it up a little bit with a strap pack or something like that on it, it's amazing the things you can get in. Somebody else made a comment earlier about, finding things in their pack, and maybe it was Evan at the end of the Untamed. I'm the same way. I especially find food buried in the bottom of packs. You come in, you grab that bag for the next 24 hours, and you forget to take the last one out. So, and either you've gotten through some of it or none of it, and now you've got 48 hours of food in your bag. And so it is a difficult thing to nail down, but be careful about going too small. Unless you're, a 12 to 24 hour race, you can get away with it. But much over that, especially if you have, the need to carry food for the entire race or whatever, I would be careful about that. That's all.
Well, yeah, totally. That's great advice. I mean, if I carry a big enough, like a Hyperlight 2400 or something, I can literally throw Kate's pack in my pack.
I put honestly, and the other thing about coordinating with teammates after you've raced for a while, I mean, I will put some of my food in the outer pockets of Cliff's pack, so I can just like run up on him and grab my snack. And I mean, being the lighter member on the team, it doesn't make sense for me to have a massive pack. And so it's like, I will just, he's my snack machine. I'm just like, and so that's smart, over time when you've raced with teammates, so you can kind of get that. I'll have to figure out who I'm going to target for Shenandoah. Evan or Glenn are my teammates. So.
Well, I'm not good for much else besides hauling a lot of heavy gear around. So I tell all my teammates to use that functionality. Don't give me a map, but I can carry your candy.
We had a couple of other good questions in the chat, but before we go to that, did anybody else have thoughts or questions on what we've said so far?
I was just going to say one thing. In every race, like it has that mandatory gear, and there's always some stuff that you really won't plan on using, if that makes sense. Like you don't plan on using like a knife or a space blanket or a mirror or like a lighter. Like if you have to use those things, there's probably a bigger emergency in play. So what I like to do is take all the gear that I hope to never use and pack that tight in a waterproof bag and shove that in my pack. And if all goes according to plan, I will never open it. Even in a longer race, the C2C is kind of a goofy multi-day race because there are so many TAs. It feels like a bunch of short races stacked together. But I had a dry bag like that in my pack that I never opened, full of all the mandatory gear. Because of the weather, I didn't need to get into my coat, etc. But it was nice to have that kind of sealed off. So if I was looking for more important things, they weren't mixed in with things that weren't as important. Just something to consider, because like, a raincoat is on pretty much every gear list for a long race, a race over 12 hours. But if that, the high is 80 and the low is 68, you're probably not going to want your raincoat. Or at least I know I won't want my raincoat, so I leave it in my pack in a place that I'm not going to access it. And then I use the accessible pockets for things that I know I'm going to use.
So we've had several more questions. I think we can talk about shoes for the bike. And in terms of organization of TA bin, I have a few thoughts, but I think these are more geared towards expedition races.
There's some TA bins and smaller ones.
I think I'm not gonna dive in too deep on any of these, but we'll touch on them just because I really want to focus in on like the period 1 week to 1 hour before the race. But there's some important things to talk about, and we'll have a separate webinar on gear, Kate. So the question was, comparing different backpacks. We'll definitely get into that in a separate webinar. And adventure racers are nothing but if they're not gearheads. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of conversation about that. But in terms of the TA bin, most races 24 hours or less, you're probably not going to have a maybe.
Some of them do. Like I think Mark Harris sometimes does in his races, and a couple others I've seen. I mean, I think the thing is usually if you have a bin, it's like a small one, or sometimes there'll be races where they'll allow you to transition at your car, for example.
I would just have everything really well organized.
Like we've done that before. Like people will be able to come in through their car and then transition back out again. And yeah, I think the way that we approach gear bins is much like we approach backpacks, which is sub bags. It's really helpful when you have an idea of what the race is going to look like to pre-baggy your items. And I think food is the big one. So, whenever we know that we're going to be transitioning through either our cars or our TA bins, we have baggies of food already prepackaged and ready to go. And depending on the length of the race, you would think about how you want to prepackage your food. So if it's a shorter race, maybe you're having like, usually go by hours, so maybe like 6-hour bags of food, where like each bag has enough calories in it for about 6 hours of racing. For expedition races, we do the same thing, but usually they're 24-hour bags of food. So that's a nice way to just kind of get your food sort of all organized. For a shorter race, otherwise we don't really, unless there's like kind of gear that you definitely don't need earlier in the race, and you know you're going to need it later, we're pretty much carrying most of our items throughout. Like we are not typically in a 24-hour race or less, we're not changing clothes, for example, or even socks. Like we just kind of, race in what we're in. So that keeps our TA bins, I think, actually pretty organized because there's not necessarily much in them. Longer races, like Cliff said, we can talk about that later. But I would really encourage people when they're racing in shorter races to just minimize your TA times. Like don't put a lot in your TA bin because then you'll be hanging out in the TA for a while. And in a short race, that time just really adds up.
Anyone else have anything to add on that, or should we? Cool. So addressing the other question, which is separate shoes for the bike, that actually made me think, and we can talk about that in a sec, but that actually just made me think about prepping your bike for a race to begin with. I love to get my bike serviced regularly, and before a race is never a bad idea, although you never want to ride your bike for the first time in a race right after it's been serviced, because you never know if they miss something or anything. So I always give it a test ride after it's come back from the shop, but getting it tuned up is never a bad thing, and making sure they give a good look on all the components and everything. And actually, if there's a 24-hour race or less with a lot of TAs, throwing in an extra, derailleur or whatever, in case you have a catastrophic bike problem. At that point, you're probably not racing super competitively, but at least you can still finish the race with a, although Dave, I've read a race report from a while ago where you guys blew up a derailleur, went to a bike shop, got it fixed, and still won a race. I don't know if that's an urban legend, but
that was actually in the C2C.
Okay.
So there you go.
We had to go to a bike shop, and the bike shop owner didn't have the correct pulleys, so Jeff basically took charge and asked him, if we could get into his workroom and set up the bike on the bench, and the guy was very, very accommodating. We were extremely lucky. But yeah, I think it was Michelle's bike, and it fell apart on one stage.
There you go. So yeah, ideally you don't want that to happen to you. We've been in several races where it has happened. Everyone's going to go through it, I think, eventually in adventure racing, where you just blow up a vital component of your bike and have to deal with tough decisions, whether to fix it in the field. Usually you can jury rig something to make the bike go. Tow ropes are another thing that we should probably, at least talk about in a glancing way. Getting those prepped and tested before the race, and make sure that those systems work and that you've trained with them. Just in terms of getting the bike ready, we use little, what do you call them?
I don't know what you're talking about.
The stuff to hold stuff on the bike.
So you can get like bento boxes and stuff for your bike. We usually put a bento box right on the top tube there so that you can snack while you're riding.
Pack those full of stuff before the race.
Bike riding is often a good time to catch up on calories. So I saw somebody asked in the chat about how many calories we're shooting for per hour. And this depends a little bit on the activity and the race, but Evan noted roughly 150 to 250 calories per hour. And that's particularly, especially if you're going for a while, you don't want to get behind on calories. And depending on who you are and your body sort of size and needs, you might be kind of lower or higher on that. But biking is a great time to snack, and having your food like ready to go, pre-packed on your bike we have little like handlebar little like snack bag things too. So depending again on the length of the race, we might have a lot of food loaded up on our bike.
Which that was a huge revelation to me, because for years I raced without any food on my bike, and now that we have them, you can eat while riding. There's always road riding and adventure races pretty much. So, that's a really good time to refuel while you're still moving at top speed or near it. So that really blew my mind when we started using that equipment. I thought that was just like my favorite piece of gear when I first got it. Now it's just part of our racing style. But I've seen people tape goos and stuff to their top bar, their top tube on their bikes. I don't recommend that, because if you bushwhack or lift your bike up or whatever, those things can get ripped off. I know some people still do it, but better to just have something where you can secure that stuff so it doesn't fall off. Yeah, sure, Tom. I'm sure you can find photos of our rigs if you scroll through Strong Machines photos of our expedition races.
We can take some photos at the Epic of kind of how Peg Glenn looks like he might have a bike pic that he can share with everybody.
One other thing is I always preload water bottles onto my bike before the race. It's a really easy way to store water on the course, or to just bring extra stuff that you're not carrying on your back. I usually do one that's super concentrated noon and the other is water. Just have both those options on my bike. Does anyone else have any bike specific prep advice?
Make sure you're carrying your mandatory bike gear on your bike. I think my first race, I didn't know that you could do that. And so I had my pump and stuff in my backpack for the whole race. So get a bike bag, put it on your bike.
Anyone else? Cool. Yeah, Dave. Sorry.
One of the tricks that I've done for some of the longer races, you might get into a TA and from trekking to biking, and you just don't have time to get on the food. I pre-bottle a Ensure or Boost in the biggest bottle I can find and put it on the bike. Unless it's really hot out, it'll last a couple days in a bottle. Certainly you still get nutrition out of it, even if you might get a little bit of an upset stomach, but you can get 1,200 calories into a water bottle. And for those people who don't digest very well, that's where I get a lot of my calories in races, is from that first big bike bottle. The only caution I'll give you is on that is you need to drink the equivalent in water after you've had that. Otherwise your stomach will shut down. So, and that I learned, from, a bad experience, but, always backfill everything with the same amount of water if you're going to have a concentrated solution that's over 15%. That's it.
Great. So in terms of bike shoes, we can start a little bit of a debate here, and I don't think we really need to. Maybe we can just address, for those of you who do use 2 pairs of shoes in these shorter races, the specific clipless shoes and then trail runners, and you switch back and forth. What is your strategy for switching and for carrying those? I don't do it, so I'm not speaking.
Well, we can start. I think we should say that we don't. So Cliff and I oftentimes will race shorter races. So anything up to 24 hours with power straps. So again, to just minimize time in transition and to minimize weight on your pack, instead of switching back and forth between trail shoes and bike shoes, we've found that the power straps work pretty well. So they're basically like a modern day sort of like basket style. There used to be those like baskets on the toes or whatever. These are just a strap that goes over your kind of like middle of your foot. I will caution against using them excessively in long races, because Cliff and I did a lot of racing a couple of years ago, and by the end of the racing season, it took a while for our toes to come back. We had numbness for a very long time, like many months, and But otherwise, I would say for shorter races, they're actually really great because then you're not carrying extra weight and you still get, we find the power transfer is really good.
Well,
What?
oh, the power transfer is really good.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm correcting your grammar.
It's good to have a grammar corrector just sitting right next to you.
You'll never find a misspelling in my Facebook post.
Yeah, so we find, I mean, the power transfer is good and it just keeps your feet stable. So if you're riding trails or whatever, you're not like kind of jumping off the pedals. And it just cuts down on time. We find them to be pretty comfortable. But that said, we also know a lot of people do switch between bike shoes and trail shoes. So that's not necessarily the first choice for everybody.
The only advice I would give is if you're not changing shoes and your teammates are, just go over there and just keep feeding them, because that's a good way to show them that they're losing time by switching shoes. It's killing them with kindness. But no, I know that there is the mainstream of thinking in adventure racing is clipless pedals are always better, and you'll just get more power out of it, and that it's worth carrying an extra pair of shoes and switching in TAs for that gain. So, and the control and just what you're used to.
Do others who use bike shoes want to make your case?
I use bike shoes in every race. The only time I don't use bike shoes is in a very short race, like less than 12 hours, where I know that there's going to be a lot of transitions, and the time of switching shoes might actually cost you in the end. I don't find that that I often have to carry the bike shoes or bike helmet. In fact, I had to carry them last week at the C2C, and it was the first time maybe in more than a year that I've had to, well, in certainly more than a year that I've had to carry anything, and we had to carry it for 1 3-mile trek to start the race. I use the Out There pack, the MS pack, like the smallest one they sell. And it's got a nice pocket in the back that'll fit a helmet. It also fits my trekking shoes when I'm biking. I can shove them in there and it fits them well. It's not ideal carrying them, but I think, like, for me, the trade-off is kind of in my favor because I rarely have to carry bike stuff while trekking, if that makes sense.
So we've got like 9 minutes left before the end of the hour, so we'll start wrapping things up. But
yeah, I thought Kate actually had one last good question maybe we can answer here, which is in shorter races, whether people wear bike shorts. And I think this is another one that probably there's a fair amount of personal preference. I know I've raced with teammates who just love their bike shorts and they will race the entire race in their bike shorts. They will trek in their bike shorts. I have had one teammate who loves them actually for the paddle. He finds that it gives them just a nice cushion for the paddle as well. Personally, I don't race in bike shorts. I race in like long tri shorts, basically like bike short style, but no padding, because I just find that, again, for up to 24 hours, I don't really need the padding that comes from bike shorts. And I'd rather just not be switching back and forth between shorts during a race. But I don't know if anybody else has preferences in terms of, or sort of recommendations for how they handle bike shorts during a race. I think ultimately you can tell, I mean, it sort of depends on what your approach is to the race, but if you're trying to go faster, then you're not going to want to carry an extra pair of shorts around, or you're not going to want to take the time in TA to switch your shorts out. Yeah, so Glenn, one of those teammates that likes to wear his bike shorts for everything. I thought that, I haven't raced with Glenn yet. I was pretty sure he was one of them. So
yeah, I wear bike shorts for everything, except if it's like a multi-day race and the stage is strictly trekking. I'll wear bike shorts for 36 hours. You just got to get the right pair.
And contrarily, I'll wear running shorts for everything. Which
Know your own butt. I think that's the takeaway.
Glenn made fun of me for that.
Takeaway right there.
Know your own butt.
Some people
Cover your
can't handle
ass.
bike shorts for more than a short period of time before they start chafing. And I have a teammate that, even if it's an hour, they're changing out of their bike shorts into their trekking shorts. But yeah, longer races, I think it's pretty important to change out. And then because it provides you a clean surface. So that helps.
A blank slate.
Yes.
Wheeler Rasa. So one other thing I wanted to just go back to was that like a week out, or even now, like even in March, get your gear out and do a real thorough evaluation of it. And if you're going to replace something, now is a great time to do it. Or when you have some time to practice with it, and it's all about what you can manage to replace, but I would definitely be having a running list in your head of what gear needs to be replaced and what is starting to wear out. And you don't want to ever try new gear out in a race. You always want to be comfortable with it going into a race. So, I just bought new running shorts at the New Balance outlet in Oxford yesterday, and I'm going to try them out before I'll ever wear them in a race, because you don't want to be chafing or, dealing with a piece of gear that's malfunctioning on you, and you're like, well, I just bought it the day before the race, or, not knowing what's going to be on the mandatory gear list for any given race, but knowing that general genre of stuff that generally ends up on those lists. I would just make sure that's all in good working order, because I'm the type of person who doesn't pack till the night before the race. And then I'm looking through my stuff and realizing there's 3 or 4 things that I'm going to need to text Evan or Glenn or, Kit about and say, hey, do you have an extra one of these? Because mine is busted.
And I can say relatedly, it's really important after the race to clean your gear as soon as possible. And it's just actually for that reason, like not only the smell, but also just to keep things in working order. Like anytime you leave stuff, I mean, we've had races where, especially if we've traveled internationally to race, like sometimes we haven't had access to like full ways to clean our bike, for example, and then you're throwing it in your bike box and all your gear, and you're like late for your flight, you throw it all in, you get back, and we've had times where like our bike boxes have been delayed by the airline and we get it a week later, and it's just everything is crusted really intensely, and it's so hard to clean it then, and then that's when you get a lot of wear and tear in your gear. So just care for it. AR is hard on gear, but if you clean it as soon as possible, it tends to last longer.
One other thing that came to my head, and then we'll wrap this up, is like that night before the race and charging batteries and getting water ready, and just those last minute tasks. You definitely, it's never a bad idea to have a checklist of all the stuff that needs to get done, because you're so busy running around doing so much stuff that having a list where you don't have to do the thinking, where it's right there for you. I know there's been races where we've left batteries plugged into the wall, headed out to the start line. It's okay. We always carry extras, Glenn. Don't give me that. We're never run out of batteries on course. Making sure that there's foolproof systems so that your own brain, you're not relying too hard on your own brain to remember all those things at 4:30 in the morning before it's light out, when you had a bad night's sleep, and getting that all done as soon as possible before the race is a good thing. Getting all your batteries charged is always a huge, thing to check off the list, because running out of batteries is a pretty bad thing to have happen in an adventure race. But that's what teammates are for. They'll help you through. And you know what? I don't want to freak anyone out with all this advice, because we raced for years without any of this advice, and we did all right. We did fine. We survived. This is really just to help you have a more pleasurable and potentially faster race. But honestly, stories of racing without adequate gear, or racing without charging your batteries, or any of that or doing maintenance on your bike are some of the best stories that come out of adventure racing. So those are fun too, and they're great learning experiences. I will never forget the time I spent an hour and a half fixing a chain that blew up because I hadn't had my bike fixed or maintained or updated, or I hadn't done a proper maintenance on it when I was just getting into the sport. And we were in the middle of the Michigan woods getting eaten alive by, mosquitoes the size of sparrows, and trying to fix a chain with very tiny little tools while you're just, blood is seeping out of your, stuff like that. Great stories. I don't ever want to do it again, but that now sticks in the back of my head when I'm deciding whether or not to clean my chain out after a race. So I think that kind of is a good 101 for prepping. Does anyone have any last things to add? And we'll wrap this up. Cool. Thank you to Evan for preparing that PowerPoint with that powerful quote, which still not sure if that's a Nathan Fave quote or an Evan Moreshead quote, but I like it either way. Anything else?
No, good to see everybody, and we look forward to seeing you all in July, hopefully. Maybe before that at another race. So thank you all for coming tonight.
Yeah, and feel free to use the Strong Machine AR Club Facebook page if you have any questions for any other time that doesn't fit into a webinar format or topic, and send us those topics of interest. I think I saw a couple ideas up there. Our next clinic will be in 2 weeks, and it'll cover navigation, and we're going to have two of our top navigators, Rick and Tom, will be dueling on that one. So that'll be interesting. I will personally learn a lot. So wishing you guys all the best, and great to see all your faces. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye.
Bye.